Have you ever stopped to think about what really makes a child smile? Is it money, mansions, imported cars, or is it something much simpler? Something that cannot be bought. The story you are about to hear today will make you question everything you believe about success, love, and what really matters in life. Get ready, because in a few hours you will discover how a simple cleaning lady managed to do something that a millionaire had been unable to do for months. She brought joy back to two children who had lost the will to live. Eduardo Mendez was 45 years old and owned a financial empire valued at over $1 million. His companies were spread throughout the state of Sao Paulo, from construction companies in Alphaville to restaurant chains in Weimar. He lived in a 1,200 mansion in Marumbi with 6 suites, a private cinema, a fully equipped gym, and a swimming pool that looked like it came out of a five-star resort. Eduardo had everything money could buy, but he had lost the only thing that really mattered. His family was shattered. 8 months ago, Helena, his wife of 15 years, had died in a car accident on Marginal Pinheiros. A head-on collision on a rainy Tuesday afternoon changed everything forever. Eduardo was widowed at 45 with two young children, Miguel, 8, and Sofia, just 5. What he didn't expect was how Helena's death would affect not only him, but especially the children. Miguel, who had once been a cheerful and talkative boy, became quiet and withdrawn. He spent hours in his room playing with his tablet, with no interest in playing or talking. Sophia, who had always been the sunshine of the house, now cried for any reason and refused to eat most meals. The two looked like ghosts, wandering the halls of the mansion, lost in a sadness that even Eduardo didn't know how to cure. Eduardo tried everything. He hired child psychologists from the best offices in Sao Paulo, paying $500 per session. He bought all the toys the children asked for, turned one of the rooms into a game room, complete with imported video games, and even installed a professional playground in the backyard. Nothing worked. The children ate just enough to survive. Miguel had lost 3 kilos, and Sofia seemed more apathetic every day. The nannies Eduardo hired didn't last even a month. The first, Mrs. Carmen, an experienced lady from Perdizes, gave up after 3 weeks, saying that the children were impossible to deal with. The second, Jessica, a young woman with a degree in education, lasted only 15 days before resigning, claiming that the environment was too heavy. The third didn't even last a week. Eduardo felt completely lost. He, who led meetings with dozens of executives, who closed deals worth millions of reais, who was respected throughout the Sao Paulo financial market, couldn't make his own children smile. Worse still, he couldn't even get them to eat properly. It was as if Helena had taken all the life and joy out of that house with her. During those terrible months, Eduardo immersed himself even deeper in his work. He left home at 6 a.m. and returned at 10 p.m., leaving the children in the care of nannies who came and went. On weekends, when he should have been with Miguel and Sofia, he locked himself in his office in the mansion to take care of pending issues, or simply because he didn't know how to deal with the awkward silence that had settled between them. The mansion, which used to be filled with laughter, jokes, and lively conversation during dinner, now resembled a mausoleum. The grand piano in the living room, where Helena used to play every night, remained closed and dusty. The dining table for 8 people never had more than 3 seats occupied, and even then, meals were eaten in complete silence. Eduardo ate mechanically while Miguel poked at the food on his plate, and Sofia just played with her food without putting almost anything in her mouth. That was when Larissa came into their lives. Larissa Santos, 42, a resident of Tiradentes, on the eastern outskirts of Sao Paulo. She did not come as a nanny. Eduardo had given up on hiring caregivers after a string of failures. Larissa was hired as a cleaning lady through a cleaning company that Eduardo used in his company offices. Eduardo's first impression of Larissa was completely superficial and prejudiced. She arrived on Monday morning wearing a simple navy blue uniform, her hair tied back in a simple bun, no makeup, carrying a worn fabric bag, and wearing flat shoes worn out by time. Eduardo greeted her quickly before leaving for work, giving her only basic instructions: clean the house, change the bedding, organize the kitchen, nothing else. What Eduardo didn't know was that Larissa carried with her a wealth of experience that none of the expensive, specialized nannies he had hired possessed. Larissa was the mother of 3 children. Caio, 22, had a degree in civil engineering from FATEC. Amanda, 19, was a nursing student at UN9, and João Pedro, 15, was a high school student at a state school in Itaquera. She had raised the three practically alone after her husband abandoned them when João Pedro was only 2 years old. For 15 years, Larissa worked three different jobs to support her family and pay for her children's education. In the morning, she cleaned upper-middle-class homes in Vila Olimpia. In the afternoon, she worked as a kitchen assistant at a restaurant in Tatuapé. 3 times a week in the evening, she cleaned offices in downtown São Paulo. On weekends, when she wasn't working, Larissa taught her children, helped them with their homework, and always found a way to turn difficult moments into special memories. But there was something Eduardo could never have imagined about that simple woman who had come to clean his house. Larissa had a degree in education from Cruzeiro do Sul University. She had specialized in child psychopedagogy and worked for 8 years as an elementary school teacher before life forced her to change course. When her ex-husband disappeared, leaving debts that she had to take on in order not to lose her home, Larissa had to abandon the career she loved to find jobs that paid immediately and in cash. During her first days working at the Mendes mansion, Larissa observed everything in silence. She arrived at 8 a.m. when Eduardo had already left and saw Miguel and Sofia having breakfast with their new nanny, Fernanda. The children barely touched their bread, left half their juice, and left the table as soon as possible. Fernanda, a 25-year-old woman who had recently graduated with a degree in education, tried to cheer them up with forced conversation, but it was clear that she was unable to bond with them. Larissa cleaned the house, paying attention to every detail that told the story of that family. In Miguel's room, she saw dozens of expensive toys thrown in the corners, still in their original packaging. Hot Wheels remote control cars, which cost more than $300 each, video games worth $2,000, Star Wars Lego kits that Eduardo had bought for more than $500. Everything was stashed away, as if Miguel had completely lost interest in playing. In Sofia's room, the situation was even more touching. There was a collection of imported dolls, each costing around $200, all still in their boxes. A hand-painted MDF dollhouse that Eduardo had specially ordered from a carpenter in Campos do Jordão for $2,800 stood in a corner of the room, but it was clear that Sofia had never played with it. The doll clothes, which had cost a fortune at a store in Hardans, were all folded in drawers, never having been used. What caught Larissa's attention most were the photographs scattered around the house. In the living room, on top of the dusty piano, there was a family photo taken last Christmas. Helena was radiant, wearing a red dress, hugging Eduardo, while Miguel and Sofia smiled broadly, one on each side. It was impossible not to notice the difference. In the photo, the children looked completely different from the ones she saw every day now. In the kitchen, Larissa found more clues about how that family had functioned before the tragedy. There was a handwritten recipe book in Helena's delicate handwriting, recipes for chocolate cakes, homemade brigadeiros, apple pie, honey bread. On the back cover of the notebook, Helena had pasted a photo of herself baking a cake with Miguel and Sofia. The three of them were covered in flour and chocolate, laughing with their hands dirty from the dough. It was the perfect image of a happy family. Larissa also noticed that the refrigerator was always full of expensive and sophisticated foods that Eduardo had his driver pick up from the best restaurants in Sao Paulo. Sushi from Kinochita, pasta from Fasano, sweets from Confeitaria Colomba. But the children barely touched these delicacies. They preferred to go without eating than to try those foods which, however gourmet they were, did not taste like home, like the love Helena put into every meal. During her second week working at the mansion, Larissa witnessed a scene that left a deep impression on her. It was Thursday around 3 p.m., and she was cleaning the dining room when she heard Sofia crying in the kitchen. The girl was sitting on the floor, hugging an old, worn-out doll, the only doll she really used, which had clearly been a gift from Helena. Sofia cried softly, "Mommy, I want to eat your chocolate cake. Why don't you come back to bake cake with me?" Fernanda, the nanny, tried to comfort her, offering her a piece of expensive cake that Eduardo had ordered from a famous bakery in Pinheiros. But Sofia pushed her away, screaming that it wasn't the same as her mother's. At that moment, Larissa felt her heart tighten. She knew that pain, that longing that couldn't be filled with money or expensive gifts. When her children were little and she had to work late, they missed her too. The difference was that Larissa always found a way to be present, even when she couldn't be there physically. She left little notes in their lunchboxes, prepared special meals on weekends, and created simple but meaningful traditions that made her children feel loved. Larissa finished cleaning the living room and went to the kitchen. Sophia was still on the floor, now just sniffling quietly. Fernanda was on the phone, probably complaining to a friend about how difficult it was to work with problematic children. That's when Larissa did something that would change everything. She knelt down next to Sophia and said softly, "Hi, Princess. Can you tell me what your mom's chocolate cake was like?" Sophia lifted her eyes, red from crying, and for the first time in weeks talked about Helena. She told how her mother let her break the eggs even though she made a mess, how they licked the bowl together after making the batter, how Helena made faces on the cake using whipped cream and colored sprinkles, how they sang happy birthday even when it wasn't anyone's birthday, just for the thought of being together. Fernanda, irritated by the intruder, said sharply, "Sophia, you know you can't talk to the cleaning lady. Your father won't like it." But Sophia, for the first time in months, completely ignored the nanny and continued talking to Larissa, who listened to every word with genuine interest and affection. When Miguel arrived from the private school where he studied in Marumbi, he found Sophia still talking to Larissa in the kitchen. Normally, he would go straight to his room and only come out at dinner time, but something about that scene intrigued him. He approached slowly and heard Larissa ask Sophia, "And Miguel, did he also like to help his mother in the kitchen?" It was the first time in months that someone had included Miguel in a conversation about Helena in a natural way, without seeming to be in therapy or trying to solve anything. Miguel, who had developed an aversion to any mention of his mother because it was always accompanied by pitying looks and cliched phrases about overcoming loss, felt curiously comfortable with Larissa's simplicity. "I used to help my mom make brigadeiros," Miguel said quietly, as if confessing a secret. "She let me roll the balls, and I always ate more brigadeiros than I put in the pan." For the first time in 8 months, Miguel smiled. It was a small, almost imperceptible smile, but Larissa noticed it. Fernanda, uncomfortable with the situation, tried to interrupt. "Kids, let's go to the living room and watch cartoons on cable TV. We have Netflix, Disney Plus, all the channels you want." But Miguel and Sophia completely ignored the nanny. For the first time in months, they were really engaged in conversation, remembering happy moments without it bringing only sadness. Larissa realized that there was a unique opportunity here. These children didn't need more expensive toys or sophisticated entertainment. They needed someone who understood that missing their mother was not a problem to be solved, but a natural part of the love they felt for Helena. They needed someone who wouldn't try to replace Helena, but who would honor her memory in a healthy and loving way. On Friday of that week, Larissa made a decision that would change everything. She arrived at work carrying, in addition to cleaning supplies, a discreet bag with simple ingredients: eggs, flour, cocoa powder, sugar, milk. She had decided to do something that none of the expensive specialized nannies had thought to do. Not to try to make Miguel and Sophia forget Helena, but to honor her memory by creating new special moments. When the children came home from school, Larissa was finishing cleaning the kitchen. Sophia, who now looked for Larissa as soon as she got home, ran into the kitchen and asked, "Larissa, can you tell us more stories about when you were a child?" It was then that Larissa said something that would change everything. "How about instead of just talking, we do something together? How about we make a chocolate cake? Not like your mom's, because that one was special to her, but a cake of our own, our way." Miguel, who had developed the habit of staying close whenever Larissa was around, approached with interest. But Fernanda said that children can't touch anything in the kitchen without adult supervision, he said, repeating the strict rules that all the nannies had imposed. Larissa smiled. "I'm an adult, aren't I? And I know very well how to cook with children. I taught my 3 children from an early age. Cooking together is one of the best ways to show love." Fernanda, who was in the living room playing with her cell phone, didn't even notice what was happening in the kitchen. To her, Larissa was just the cleaning lady, and the children were just a boring job she had to put up with until she found something better. She had no idea that at that moment, a transformation was beginning that Eduardo had never been able to achieve with all his money. Larissa put an apron on Sophia and he gave another to Miguel. She taught Sophia to break the eggs carefully, letting her make mistakes and mess up without getting angry. She showed Miguel how to sift the flour, explaining that it made the cake fluffier. As they worked, Larissa told stories about when she taught her own children to cook, about the funny mistakes that happened, about how each cake turned out different, but always delicious when made with love. What happened that afternoon was magical. For the first time in 8 months, Miguel and Sophia laughed genuinely. They laughed when Sophia spilled flour on the floor. They laughed when Miguel added too much cocoa powder and got his face all dirty. Larissa told them how her son Caio, at the same age as Miguel, tried to bake a cake by himself and forgot to add sugar, resulting in a salty cake that the whole family had to pretend was delicious. While the cake was baking, the three of them sat at the kitchen table to wait. Sophia, covered in dough and flour, was beaming. Miguel, who hadn't shown interest in anything for months, stood glued to the oven, watching the cake rise. Larissa took advantage of the moment to tell them more about her own life, about how sometimes the simplest things are the most special, about how cooking together was a way of saying, "I love you," without needing words. When the cake was ready, Larissa taught the children to test it with a toothpick to see if it was done. The smell of homemade cake filled the kitchen, a smell that house hadn't smelled in a long time. Sophia clapped her hands when Larissa took the cake out of the pan, perfect and fragrant. Miguel, who hadn't smiled in months, gave a huge smile when he saw the result of their work. But the most special moment was yet to come. Larissa cut 3 pieces of cake and served them on small plates for each of them. When Sophia took her first bite, her eyes filled with tears. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of joy, of fond memories, of a connection to the happy moments she had experienced with Helena. "It's not the same as Mom's," said Sophia, "but it's just as delicious. It's delicious because we made it together." Miguel agreed, eating his piece eagerly for the first time in months. "Mom would be happy to see us making cake," he said. And for the first time, he was able to talk about Helena without it bringing only pain. Fernanda, who finally came to the kitchen to see what was going on, was shocked to find the children eating cake and chatting animatedly with the cleaning lady. Her first reaction was irritation. "What is this mess, Sophia? Are you all dirty?" "Miguel, you know you can't eat sweets before dinner," but something extraordinary happened. For the first time in months, the children stood up for something they wanted to do. Sophia said firmly, "I want to stay here with Larissa. We made cake together." Miguel, who always quietly obeyed all the nanny's orders, said, "I don't want to go to the living room. It's cooler here." Fernanda was taken aback. In all the weeks she had been working there, she had never seen the children show any will of their own or enthusiasm for anything. They always passively accepted everything she proposed without showing any real interest in anything. Now suddenly, they were excited, talkative, smiling, and all because of the cleaning lady. Larissa, noticing the attention, said diplomatically, "Fernanda, you don't need to worry. I just helped the children make a cake. They missed cooking. Now I'm going to finish my cleaning, and then they can go with you." But Sophia clung to Larissa's apron. "I want you to stay a little longer. Can you tell us more stories, Miguel?" She also showed that she didn't want Larissa to leave. "Fernanda, can you stay in the living room? We want to stay here with Larissa." Fernanda left the kitchen irritated, muttering about a cleaning lady who doesn't know her place and rude children. But Larissa stayed there cleaning up the mess they had made while talking to Miguel and Sophia about recipes, about family, about how sometimes the best memories are made in the simplest moments. When Eduardo came home that night, around 10:30, he found a scene he hadn't seen in months. Miguel and Sophia were still awake in the kitchen, finishing the cake they had made. Fernanda was in the living room, visibly irritated, fiddling with her cell phone. "Why didn't you go to bed on time?" asked Eduardo, automatically assuming there was a problem. Fernanda immediately began to complain. "Mr. Eduardo, I need to talk to you. The new housekeeper is interfering with my work. She let the children make a mess in the kitchen, cook without proper supervision, and now they won't listen to me." Eduardo, tired after another exhausting day of meetings and business problems, was ready to simply send the children to bed and deal with the housekeeper's situation the next day. But then something unusual happened. Sophia ran up to him and said excitedly, "Daddy, we made a cake. Look how delicious it is." Eduardo stopped. How long had it been since Sophia had run up to him excitedly to tell him something? How long had it been since she had shown enthusiasm for any activity? Miguel, who usually just greeted his father quickly before going to his room, also approached. Dad, Larissa taught us how to bake a cake just like Mom used to make. It was really cool. For a moment, Eduardo didn't know how to react. For months, he had tried everything to get his children to show some interest, some joy, some desire to do anything. He had spent fortunes on toys, outings, activities, therapists, and specialized nannies. And now, suddenly, a simple cleaning lady had achieved what he couldn't. She had made his children truly smile. Eduardo tasted a piece of the cake. It was a simple, homemade cake, made with basic ingredients. It wasn't sophisticated like the expensive desserts he had delivered from the best restaurants in the Sao Paulo, but there was something special about it. It tasted like home, like love, like shared moments. It was the kind of cake Helena used to make, simple but made with love. Where's Larissa? Asked Eduardo. She's already left, replied Sophia, but she said she'll teach us how to make brigadeiro tomorrow. Dad, did you know she has 3 children and that she taught them to cook from an early age? Eduardo was surprised. For weeks, Larissa had worked in his house, and he knew practically nothing about her, other than the fact that she was punctual and efficient at cleaning. He had never bothered to talk to her or learn her story. To him, she was just another employee, easily replaceable like all the others. But now, seeing his children excited for the first time in months, Eduardo began to realize that perhaps there was something special about this woman that he had completely underestimated. Maybe she had something that all the expensive, specialized nannies didn't have. The ability to truly connect with Miguel and Sofia in a genuine and loving way. Fernanda, seeing that Eduardo was not automatically on her side, intensified her complaints. Mr. Eduardo, I studied education. I have specific training in caring for children. It is not appropriate for a housekeeper to interfere in the children's educational development. It can confuse them and disrupt the routine I am trying to establish. Eduardo looked at Fernanda, then at his children. Sofia was hugging him, something she hadn't done in weeks. Miguel was excitedly telling him how he had learned to sift flour. For the first time in months, they seemed truly alive, truly happy. Fernanda, said Eduardo after a few minutes of reflection, thank you for your services, but we will no longer need them starting tomorrow. Fernanda was shocked. Mr. Eduardo, I don't understand. The children are well cared for. I'm qualified. I have training. Eduardo interrupted her. Yes, you have training, but training isn't everything. Tomorrow I'll talk to Larissa. After Fernanda packed her things and left, Eduardo sat down in the kitchen with Miguel and Sofia. It was the first time in months that the 3 of them had been together, really talking, without the constant tension that had settled between them after Helena's death. Tell me about Larissa, said Eduardo, and the children talked about how she really listened when they told her things about Helena, without trying to change the subject or give ready-made advice. They talked about how she knew funny stories about their own children. They talked about how she made even cleaning the house interesting, humming songs and playing games. Dad, said Miguel, Larissa doesn't try to make us forget about Mom. She lets us talk about Mom and even helps us remember the good things. Sophia agreed and said that baking a cake together was a way of saying you love someone, just like Mom used to do. Eduardo felt a twinge in his heart. For months, he had tried to protect his children from suffering by avoiding talking about Helena. He thought that not mentioning their mother would help them get over it faster. He had instructed all the nannies to distract the children when they were sick, not to feed their longing, to focus on the present and the future. But maybe he was wrong. Perhaps trying to make Miguel and Sofia forget Helena was exactly what was preventing them from healing. Maybe they needed someone who understood that loving someone who is gone is not something you need to heal from, but something that needs to be honored and integrated into your life in a healthy way. That night, for the first time in 8 months, Miguel and Sofia went to bed smiling. They talked excitedly about what they would do with Larissa the next day, what other recipes she could teach them, what stories she would tell them. Eduardo tucked them into bed and, for the first time in a long time, they gave him goodnight kisses spontaneously, without him having to ask. Eduardo stayed up late that night thinking, thinking about how he had been so focused on solving his children's problems that he had forgotten to really be present with them, thinking about how he had outsourced love, thinking that expensive, qualified nannies could replace his presence, thinking about how a simple cleaning lady had achieved in one afternoon what months of therapy and thousands of dollars spent on entertainment had failed to achieve. The next morning, Saturday, Eduardo made a joint decision. He didn't go to the office. For the first time in months, he decided to spend the entire weekend at home with his children. When Larissa arrived at work, Eduardo was waiting for her in the kitchen. "Good morning, Larissa," he said. "I'd like to talk to you." Larissa, thinking she would be fired for meddling where she shouldn't have, became nervous. "Mr. Eduardo, did I do something wrong yesterday?" Eduardo interrupted her. "You didn't do anything wrong. On the contrary, you did something I wasn't able to do. You brought joy back to my children." Eduardo told Larissa about the last 8 months, about Helena's death, about how Miguel and Sofia had lost the will to live, about all the failed attempts to help them. He told her about the nannies who didn't last, about the expensive toys that didn't spark their interest, about the guilt he felt for not being able to be a good father to his children at a time when they needed him most. Larissa listened attentively, without judging, without giving cheap advice. When Eduardo finished, she said something that surprised him. "Mr. Eduardo, you are not a bad father. You are a father who is suffering as much as your children, but you don't know how to deal with it. Sometimes when we lose someone very important, we become so focused on trying to resolve the pain that we forget to simply be present with it." "What do you mean?" asked Eduardo. Larissa explained, "Children don't need to forget their mother to be okay. They need to learn to keep the love they feel for her in a special place in their hearts, while creating new happy memories. Yesterday, when we made the cake, we weren't trying to replace Helena. We were honoring her, doing something she would have done, but in our own way." Eduardo had never thought of it that way. "Larissa," he said, "I'd like to make you an offer. Would you agree to work not only as a cleaner, but also helping with the children? I'd pay you double what you earn now, and you'd have all the benefits." Larissa was surprised. "Senor Eduardo, I don't have a degree in education." Eduardo interrupted her. "I've hired several people with degrees. None of them achieved what you did in one afternoon. You have something more important than degrees. You have heart." But there was something Eduardo didn't know about Larissa, something she had kept to herself during all those weeks working at the mansion. Larissa didn't just understand children through maternal instinct or life experience. She had a degree in education, had worked for years as a teacher, and had specialized in child psychology. She knew exactly what she was doing when she decided to honor Helena's memory instead of trying to make the children forget her. "Mr. Eduardo," Larissa said, "there's something you need to know about me." And then she told her whole story, about her degree in education, about the years she spent working as a teacher, about how she had to abandon her dream career when her ex-husband disappeared, leaving debts behind. She told him how she raised 3 children practically on her own, how she always used education and love as her main tools for raising them. Eduardo was shocked. "You have a degree in education and you're working as a cleaning lady." Larissa smiled sadly. "Mr. Eduardo, sometimes life forces us to make choices we don't want to make. I needed jobs that paid immediately and in cash. Being a teacher in a public school pays very little, and I had bills to pay, children to raise, a house to keep. But why didn't you tell me this from the beginning?" Eduardo asked. Larissa replied, "Because I learned that people judge by appearance and current situation, not by what you were or know how to do. If I had said I was a teacher on the first day, you would have thought, 'Why is a teacher working as a cleaner? Must be something wrong with her.' It's easier to let our work speak for us." Eduardo felt ashamed. Larissa was right. If she had mentioned being a teacher on the first day, he would probably have been suspicious, thinking that something was wrong. He would have asked inappropriate questions, maybe even investigated her past. He judged people by their social status and financial situation, not by their character or actual competence. "Larissa," said Eduardo, "I want to apologize. I completely underestimated you. I looked at you and saw only a nanny when I should have seen a person, a professional, an experienced mother who knows how to take care of children better than anyone I've hired before." At that moment, Miguel and Sofia came down for breakfast and found their father talking to Larissa in the kitchen. "Larissa!" Sofia shouted, running to hug her. "Are you going to teach us how to make brigadeiro today?" Miguel also approached excitedly. "Dad, is Larissa going to stay with us today?" Eduardo looked at Larissa. "If she accepts my offer, she will stay with us forever." Larissa moved, accepted. Not just for the money, although she urgently needed a better income, but because she had fallen in love with those wounded children who so badly needed love and understanding. And so began a new phase in the Mendez family's life. Larissa was no longer just a cleaning lady. She became part of the family. Eduardo renegotiated her contract, significantly increased her salary, and gave her complete autonomy to care for the children as she saw fit. But most importantly, Eduardo began to spend more time at home. He realized that he had used work as an escape from the pain and challenges of single fatherhood. With Larissa there to provide support and guidance, he began to relearn how to be a father, how to be present, how to honor Helena's memory without letting sadness dominate their lives. On weekends, the four of them started cooking together. Eduardo, who had never set foot in the kitchen to do anything other than heat up ready-made food, learned to make bread, cakes, and homemade pasta. Miguel and Sofia taught their father the recipes that Larissa had taught them. It was a way to connect the whole family in an activity that Helena loved, cooking with love for those we love. Larissa created special traditions to honor Helena. Every Sunday they made her favorite dessert, chocolate pave. While they prepared it, they talked about Helena, told funny stories, and remembered special moments. Sophia no longer cried with sadness when she talked about her mother. Now she smiled as she remembered the good things. Miguel regained his appetite and interest in activities. He asked Eduardo to enroll him in cooking classes for children because he wanted to learn more recipes to make with his family. Sophia, who had lost the desire to play, started using her dolls again, but now she played at making food for the family, recreating the happy moments she had experienced in the real kitchen. Eduardo fired the private driver who picked up the children from school and started picking them up himself whenever possible. He discovered that those 20 minutes in the car were precious for talking about their day, hearing about their friends, teachers, small achievements, and daily challenges. They were simple moments, but they created a real connection between father and children. The mansion came back to life, the grand piano was tuned, and Eduardo hired a teacher to teach Miguel and Sofia to play, not so that they could replace Helena, but so that they could play the songs she liked as a way of honoring her. The dining table once again became a place for conversation and laughter, not awkward silence. Larissa brought her children to meet the Mendez family. Cayo, the engineer, became an informal mentor to Miguel, teaching him about construction and mathematics. Amanda, the nursing student, played with Sophia, taking care of her sick dolls, awakening in the girl an interest in helping others. João Pedro, closer in age to Miguel, became almost like an older brother, teaching him games and how to play, and setting an example of how to be responsible and caring. Eduardo realized that he had learned a valuable lesson about prejudice and judgment. For months, he had hired people with the best resumes, the best training from the best agencies, and none of them had been able to connect with his children. Larissa, who came to him in an apparently inferior position, working as a cleaning lady despite being a teacher, was the one who brought life back to his family. He began to rethink the way he hired employees in his companies. He began to place more value on life experience, character, and the ability to connect with people, not just diplomas and certificates. He created a scholarship program for employees who, like Larissa, had potential but had been forced by circumstances to accept jobs below their qualifications. Months later, Eduardo offered Larissa the opportunity to return to the field of education, paying for even more advanced training and creating a special position for her, educational coordinator for the daycare centers and schools that his companies maintained for employees' children. Larissa accepted, but on one condition. She would continue to take care of Miguel and Sofia in her free time because they had become part of her family. The transformation was also complete. Eduardo learned that being a good father did not mean buying expensive things or hiring the best professionals. It meant being present, truly listening, honoring the past without being stuck in it, and creating new special moments every day. Miguel and Sofia learned that it was possible to miss their mother and, at the same time, be happy again. That loving someone who was gone did not prevent them from loving the people who were present. And Larissa? Larissa learned that sometimes the most difficult paths in life take us exactly where we need to be. If her ex-husband hadn't disappeared, if she hadn't been forced to work as a cleaner, she might never have met the Mendez family. She might never have had the chance to use her experience and training to transform the lives of three people who so desperately needed love and understanding. 6 months after that first chocolate cake, the Mendez's house was unrecognizable. The dining table was always set for 5 people: Eduardo, Miguel, Sofia, Larissa, and always an extra place for when one of Larissa's children came over for dinner. The kitchen walls were decorated with photos of the family cooking together, mixed with old photos of Helena in a harmonious combination of past and present. Eduardo had learned to talk about Helena naturally, without excessive pain, but with fond nostalgia. Miguel and Sofia grew emotionally, learning that it is possible to carry love for someone who is gone without it preventing them from building new relationships and experiences. Larissa was finally able to use her professional training in a family that valued her not only for her diplomas, but mainly for her heart. But the story was not over yet. The real twist was yet to come. On a random Sunday afternoon, Eduardo would arrive home early and witness a scene that would make him fully understand how Larissa had saved not only his children, but his entire family. It was a sunny Sunday in October, almost a year after Helena's death. Eduardo had left early to deal with an emergency at one of his construction sites in Alphaville, promising to be back for lunch. But the problem was solved more quickly than expected, and he decided to surprise his family by stopping at an artisan bakery in Pinheiros to buy special breads and French croissants that Miguel loved. It was 2:30 in the afternoon when Eduardo parked in the mansion's garage. The house was quiet, but he could hear laughter coming from the kitchen. Genuine, hearty laughter, the kind that hadn't been heard in that house for a long time before Larissa arrived. Eduardo smiled, imagining that they were probably preparing some new recipe, as had become a tradition on weekends. Eduardo entered through the front door, left the bakery bags in the hall, and walked quietly toward the kitchen, wanting to surprise them. But what he saw when he reached the kitchen door left him completely paralyzed. It wasn't just a beautiful or funny scene, it was something much deeper. Something that touched his soul in a way he never expected. Larissa was sitting at the kitchen table with Miguel on her left lap and Sofia on her right lap, even though they were already too big for that. The three of them were sharing a giant piece of carrot cake with chocolate icing, eating with the same spoon, and laughing at something Sofia had just told them. The two children were completely relaxed, melting into Larissa's embrace, as if it were the safest and happiest place in the world. Sofia was telling a story about a girl at school who had lost her front tooth just in time for the class photo, imitating her classmate's surprised expression with her mouth open. Miguel laughed so hard he almost choked on the cake, and Larissa laughed along with him, rocking slightly in her chair as if it were a human seesaw. The table was covered with flour, chocolate, and other ingredients, showing that they had spent the entire afternoon cooking together. But what really moved Eduardo was not only the children's happiness, but the expression on Larissa's face. She looked at Miguel and Sofia with such pure, genuine, maternal love that it was impossible not to recognize. That woman loved her children as if they were her own. It wasn't professional affection or hired care. It was true, unconditional love, the kind that only a mother feels. Eduardo watched for a few minutes without being noticed. He saw Larissa gently wiping a little chocolate that had gotten on Sofia's nose. He saw her lovingly fixing Miguel's hair. He saw how she listened to every word the children said as if it were the most important thing in the world. He saw how Miguel and Sofia snuggled up to her with total confidence, complete surrender, as children only do with people they love and trust completely. At that moment, Eduardo understood something that struck him like lightning. All these months, he had thought that Larissa was being paid to take care of his children, but the truth was much more beautiful and complex. Larissa had adopted Miguel and Sofia into her heart. She wasn't just working there. She had become a second mother to them out of pure choice of the heart. Tears began to roll down Eduardo's face. They weren't tears of sadness, but tears of gratitude so deep that his chest ached. For almost a year, he had worried whether he was paying Larissa enough, whether she was satisfied with the job, whether she would stay there. But now he understood. Larissa wasn't there just for the salary. She was there because she had fallen in love with Miguel, and Sofia, just as a mother falls in love with her own children. Eduardo thought of Helena, and for the first time since her death, felt complete peace. Helena had not left her children helpless. In some mysterious way, the universe had sent Larissa to care for them with the same maternal love that Helena would have given them. It was as if Helena had personally chosen who would take care of her children, sending someone with a heart big enough to love children she had not given birth to. At that moment, Sofia noticed her father's presence. "Daddy!" she shouted, jumping from Larissa's lap to run to Eduardo. "You're home early. We made carrot cake and brigadeiro and even a pudding." Miguel also ran to his father, covered in flour and chocolate, beaming with happiness. "Dad," Larissa told us a story about when she was a child and used to bake cakes behind her mother's back. Eduardo hugged his children, but his eyes remained fixed on Larissa, who had stood up and was wiping her hands on her apron, a little embarrassed at having been caught in such an intimate moment with the children. "I'm sorry, Mr. Eduardo," she said. "I know they're all dirty, but they wanted to cook." "And Larissa," Eduardo interrupted, his voice choked with emotion, "you don't have to apologize for anything. On the contrary, I need to apologize to you." Larissa was confused. "Apologize for what, Mr. Eduardo?" Eduardo took a deep breath for having taken so long to recognize what you really mean to this family. Eduardo approached Larissa with Miguel and Sofia still clinging to him. "Larissa, I just realized something very important. All these months, I thought I was hiring a caregiver for my children. But you're not a hired caregiver. You're a second mother to them. You love them as if they were your own children, don't you?" Larissa was moved and couldn't hide it anymore. "Mr. Eduardo, I know they're not my children, but yes, I love them as if they were. I can't help it. They've entered my heart in a way that." She stopped, unable to continue, with tears in her eyes. "And they love you the same way," said Eduardo. "Miguel, Sofia, come here." The children approached. "I want you to answer me one thing with all sincerity. What does Larissa mean to you?" Miguel and Sofia looked at each other and answered almost at the same time. "She's like a second mom," Sofia explained. "Dad, I know that Mom Helena is our real mother and she's in heaven, but Larissa takes care of us just like Mom used to. She makes delicious food, tells stories, gives us hugs when we're sad, plays with us. It's as if Mom sent her to take care of us," Miguel agreed. "Dad, when I get sad, remembering Mom, Larissa doesn't get mad or try to distract me. She sits with me and we talk about Mom until I feel better. It's as if she understands that missing someone is normal and not a bad thing." Eduardo looked at Larissa with infinite gratitude. "Larissa, you saved my children. You brought them back to life when I couldn't do it. You gave them back their joy, their appetite, their desire to play, their ability to be happy children again. How can I thank you for something like that?" Larissa cried and replied, "Mr. Eduardo, I'm the one who's grateful. You gave me the chance to go back to doing what I love most, taking care of children, teaching, being there for the important moments." Miguel and Sofia not only received love, they also gave me a lot of love. They helped me feel useful and fulfilled again. Eduardo realized he needed to do something special to show his gratitude, not just a raise or better benefits, but something that showed he understood the true value of what Larissa had done for his family. "Larissa, I have a proposal for you. In fact, it's not a proposal, it's recognition." Eduardo asked everyone to sit at the kitchen table, the very place where so many special moments had taken place in recent months. "Larissa, you have turned this house into a home. You have not only taken care of my children, you have become part of this family, and I want to formalize that." Eduardo took an envelope that was stored in the kitchen drawer. "Larissa, here are the documents for a 3-bedroom apartment in Tatua, paid in full in your name. It is my gift to you and your children, so that you have the security of a home of your own." Larissa was in total shock. "Mr. Eduardo, I can't accept this. It's too much and you will accept it," interrupted Eduardo. "But there's more. Here are the documents for a savings account with a $500,000 to guarantee your children's education and your financial security. And here is the contract for a permanent position as educational coordinator of all my company's schools and daycare centers with a salary of $15,000 per month, all benefits, and total autonomy to implement your pedagogical ideas. Larissa couldn't stop crying. Mr. Eduardo, this is much more than I deserve. Eduardo interrupted her again. Larissa, this isn't even 10% of what you deserve. You gave my children their lives back. You taught me how to be a better father. You brought love, joy, and purpose back to this house. No amount of money in the world can pay for that. Miguel and Sophia were beaming. Larissa, now you'll live close to us, said Sophia. And you'll have a house of your own, added Miguel. Larissa looked at the children and then at Eduardo. I accept, but on one condition. I want to continue coming here on weekends to cook with you. This has become a family tradition, and you don't abandon your family. Eduardo smiled. Actually, I was hoping you would say that, because I have something else to propose to you. He took a deep breath. Larissa, would you like to move here? This house is too big for the three of us, and you practically live here already. Your children could come too. We would be a large, blended family, but a real family. Larissa was surprised. Mr. Eduardo, are you sure? Would that completely change the dynamics of the house? Eduardo replied, Larissa, the dynamics of this house have already changed completely since you arrived. They've changed for the better. Miguel and Sophia have a second mother. I have a partner in raising them. And you would have a family that truly loves you. Your children would have more space, better conditions for studying, and we would all have each other. Miguel and Sophia began to jump for joy. Dad, is Larissa going to live with us? And Caio, Amanda, and João Pedro too. Sophia was ecstatic. It will be like having older siblings, Miguel agreed. And we can cook together every day. Larissa looked around that kitchen where so many special memories had been created, where she had seen two wounded children come back to life, where she herself had rediscovered her vocation and purpose. Eduardo, she said, calling him by name for the first time. I accept, but not as an employee or a live-in. If we are going to be a family, let's be a real family with all the responsibilities and joys that entails. Eduardo was moved to be called by his name, just like a real family, he agreed. In fact, there's one last thing I want to give you. Eduardo took out another envelope. Here are the shares of one of my companies. You are no longer just an employee, Larissa. You are my partner in the early childhood education company we are going to create together. Your pedagogical ideas, your experience with children, your ability to transform lives. And all of this will help hundreds of other children. Larissa could hardly believe what was happening. In less than a year, she had gone from being a cleaning lady in financial difficulty to a partner in an educational company with her own home, financial security, and a new family that truly loved her. Eduardo, this seems like a dream. I'm afraid to wake up and find out that none of this is real. Eduardo stood up and hugged Larissa, with Miguel and Sophia running to join in the embrace. It's real, Larissa. You transformed our reality, and now we're going to transform yours. You deserve all the happiness in the world because you brought happiness to all of us. That afternoon, they called Larissa's children to tell them the news. Caio, Amanda, and João Pedro were thrilled and happy for their mother, but above all, they admired Eduardo for recognizing her true value. Mom, Caio said on the phone, finally someone sees you as we always have, an incredible woman who deserves the best in life. Amanda, always affectionate, said, Mom, you've always taken care of everyone. Now it's time for someone to take care of you too. João Pedro, the youngest, was excited. Mom, does this mean I'm going to have younger siblings? I've always wanted to be a big brother. Eduardo organized a family meeting for the next day, where everyone would get to know each other better and talk about what the new dynamic of the house would be like. Caio, who was finishing college with a degree in engineering, could use one of the suites as an office to study and work on projects. Amanda would have space to study nursing in peace. João Pedro would have the chance to study at a better private school, close to Miguel's school. But the most beautiful transformation was not material, it was emotional. Miguel and Sophia gained not only a second mother, but an extended family with older siblings who adored them. Eduardo gained a partner in raising his children and a completely new perspective on what really matters in life. Larissa's children gained better living conditions and the chance to see their mother finally recognized and valued as she deserved. And Larissa gained something she had lost when her ex-husband abandoned her, the feeling that family is not just those who share the same blood, but those who share the same love. She had created a new family based on affection, mutual respect, and sincere gratitude. 3 months later, the Mendez home was completely transformed. The dining room now had a table for 8, always full during meals. The kitchen had been enlarged to accommodate all the cooks in the family, because now everyone cooked together, from João Pedro, who was learning basic recipes, to Caio, who discovered a talent for handmade pasta. Eduardo created a special ritual. Every Thursday night was gratitude night, where each family member shared something they were grateful for that week. These conversations further strengthened the bonds between everyone and taught the children to appreciate the small joys of everyday life. Eduardo and Larissa's educational company began operating 6 months later. They created a network of daycare centers and preschools based on the philosophy that education is done with love, not just methods. Larissa implemented programs where families actively participated in their children's education, cooking together, telling stories, and creating special memories. The success was immense. In less than a year, they had 5 units operating in Sao Paulo, with a waiting list of parents wanting to enroll their children. The difference was clear. Their children were not only educated, they were loved. Larissa personally trained each educator, teaching them that pedagogical techniques are important, but the heart is fundamental. Miguel and Sofia grew emotionally in an impressive way. Miguel, who at age 8 had lost the will to live, at age 10 was a confident, cheerful child who helped take care of his younger siblings and already talked about being a cook or teacher when he grew up. Sofia, who at age 5 had lost her appetite and joy, was now a radiant girl full of dreams at age 7, telling everyone she had 2 mothers, one in heaven and one on earth. Eduardo learned that being truly rich does not mean having millions in the bank, but having people who truly love you around you. He cut his workload in half, delegated more responsibilities, and began to prioritize family time. He discovered that the best deals in life are the sincere relationships we build. Larissa fulfilled every mother's dream of seeing her children have better opportunities without losing the values she had taught them. Caio graduated with a degree in engineering and was hired by one of Eduardo's companies, not out of favor, but because of his competence. Amanda became a nurse and works at one of the best hospitals in Sao Paulo. João Pedro, now studying at an excellent private school, dreams of becoming a doctor and is already talking about creating health programs for underprivileged children. The story of the Mendes Santos family, as they came to be known, spread throughout the educational and business community of Sao Paulo. Eduardo was invited to speak on leadership and human relationships. Larissa became a reference in humanized early childhood education, but most importantly, they became an example that families can be created by love, not just genetics. 2 years after that emotional Sunday, when Eduardo arrived home early, they organized a special party. It was the family's anniversary, celebrating the date when Larissa had made her first cake with Miguel and Sofia. The party took place at the mansion, but all the families from the schools they had created, company employees, and friends who had become family over time were invited. Eduardo gave a moving speech at that party. Years ago, I thought I had lost everything when Helena died. I thought my children would never be happy again, that I would never know how to be a good father again. But the universe sent an angel disguised as a cleaning lady to teach us that family is built every day with love, patience, and true presence. Larissa also spoke. When I started working at Eduardo's house, I thought I was just cleaning to earn money. I had no idea I was embarking on a journey that would completely change my life and the lives of my children. I learned that there are no small jobs when you put love into what you do. I learned that valuing people for who they are, not for what they have, can completely transform lives. Miguel, now 10, also wanted to speak. When my mother Helena died, I thought I would never be happy again. But Larissa taught me that we can miss someone and be happy at the same time. That loving someone who has died doesn't mean we can't love someone who is alive. Now I have 2 mothers, one who taught me to love and another who taught me that love never ends. Sofia, 7, surprised everyone with her maturity. Larissa taught me that family is not just those who are born together. Family is those who stay together, who take care of each other, who make delicious food and tell beautiful stories. I am very lucky because I have a huge family full of love. At that party, surrounded by more than 200 people who had somehow been touched by the story of the Mendez Santos family, Eduardo looked around and felt a deep gratitude. Helena would be proud to see how Miguel and Sofia had grown up strong and happy. She would be happy to know that they had found a second mother who loved them as much as she had loved them. Larissa looked at her 5 children, 3 biological and 2 of the heart, running and playing together in the mansion's garden, and felt that her life was complete. All the difficulties she had faced, all the times she had to work 3 jobs, all the nights she cried worried about her children's future, it had all been worth it to reach this moment. Eduardo learned the most important lesson of his life, that true success is not measured by the amount of money you accumulate, but by the amount of love you are able to give and receive. That recognizing the value of people and treating them with dignity and respect is not only morally right, it is the key to a truly rich and meaningful life. The story of the Mendez Santos family proves that miracles happen every day, disguised as simple people who come into our lives when we need them most. It proves that prejudice prevents us from seeing the treasures that are right in front of us. It proves that true love knows no social, economic, or class barriers. Today, 5 years later, Eduardo, Larissa, Miguel, Sofia, Caio, Amanda, and João Pedro are a happy and united family. The network of schools they created now has 15 units in São Paulo and is expanding into the interior. Thousands of children are receiving an education based on love and respect. Hundreds of families are learning that educating with affection is more effective than educating with strict rules. Miguel, now a teenager, wants to study gastronomy and dreams of creating a program that teaches underprivileged children to cook. Sophia wants to be a teacher like Larissa and already helps out at the family schools during the holidays. Caio is a respected engineer who never forgets where he came from. Amanda is a dedicated nurse who treats every patient like family. João Pedro is preparing for medical school entrance exams and already volunteers at hospitals. Eduardo has become a different kind of businessman, known for valuing his employees as people, not just numbers. Larissa is one of the most respected educators in São Paulo, invited to international conferences to speak about humanized education. But most importantly, they are happy. The message this family spreads wherever they go is simple but powerful. Never underestimate the transformative power of true love. Never judge a person by their current situation, because you may be missing the opportunity to meet someone extraordinary. Always believe that no matter how bad things seem, love can heal, transform, and create miracles. And when you are going through difficulties, remember, sometimes the angel you are waiting for may arrive disguised as the simplest person at the moment you least expect it, to transform your life in a way you never imagined possible. The story of Eduardo, Larissa, Miguel, and Sofia teaches us that family is chosen every day, that true love is priceless, and that life's greatest treasures cannot be bought. They can only be given and received with an open heart. If you like this story about second chances, true love, and how a simple person can transform entire lives, leave your like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss any more exciting stories like this one. Share this video with someone who needs to believe that miracles still happen. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had someone in your life who arrived in a simple way but brought about a huge transformation? Until the next story.